All right. Good afternoon or evening, depending on where you're joining us from, maybe morning, depending on where you're joining us from, like our man Fawad, who is coming in from Turkey. It is about 3 a.m. there. So my name's Trevor. I'm with the Canadian Psychedelic Association. And this presentation today is all about a plant medicine called Ibogaine and Iboga. Iboga is a shrub that has been used ceremonially for centuries by people in West Africa, the Bwiti tribe in particular. The Bwiti spiritual tradition. It's not a tribe. There's many different tribes within the Bwiti tradition. And they have been using it, like I say, ceremonially for centuries. It's an incredibly powerful medicine. It works on many levels. It hits many receptor sites. And it was discovered in the early 1960s that it has powerful anti-addictive properties as well. So Howard Lotsoff was the man's name. He had an opiate use disorder, and his chemist friend, I heard this from his wife once, that his chemist friend knew that he would try anything and said, hey, why don't you try this Ibogaine stuff? And he did take it, apparently on the way to his psychologist's couch, and he spent the next couple of days on the psychologist's couch or something like that, because it is a powerful psychedelic. It puts you on about a 36-hour-long journey. But he came out the other end and he's like, wait a second, I haven't wanted heroin the whole time I've been on this, nor do I want it now. So that's when its anti-addictive properties were discovered. And thankfully, Howard was a real champion and got out there and knocked on a lot of doors and tried to get people's attention as to, what he felt at the time he discovered was effectively a cure for addiction. And thankfully enough, doctors did listen, and a lot of people did listen. And the Global Ibogaine Therapy Alliance was an organization that he founded, and they came out with some basic standards of care. And Ibogaine clinics started popping up around the world. It's a substance that is illegal in the States, but there are certain countries where it's not as illegal, or at least it's unregulated. So I just got a note that we're emailing all users to lead them to Zoom right now. So if you're just joining us because we weren't able to get this going on Facebook Live, we apologize. Sometimes Zoom and Facebook don't work as well together as we'd like them to. So I see we're up to 36 attendees right now. Thank you guys for showing up here. So yes, Iboga, a plant medicine that they realized it had anti-addictive qualities. So clinics started popping up. It is illegal in the States, but there are certain countries where it is either not regulated or on a prescription drug list, as it is in Canada right now. I was able to work with it from 2012 when I started my company Liberty Root along with my former business partner Gareth Moxie. And we started administering Ibogaine while Ibogaine was listed as a natural health product. And that's we were in this cool window where we were legally able to work with Ibogaine. So I'm in a unique position amongst people who have professionally worked with psychedelics in that I can kind of talk about it because I did it while it was legal for me to do so. But then in May of 2017, Health Canada changed the regulatory status of Ibogaine. They put it on the prescription drug list, and that's actually a pretty good spot for it because a natural health product shouldn't be potentially dangerous. But unfortunately, with it on the prescription drug list, that doesn't make it immediately available as a prescription. It still needs to go through phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials, which takes a lot of time, a lot of money. So we have been doing our best to get special access permission through Health Canada to work with Ibogaine. We're not quite there yet. An application was just sent back. We sent in another application last week, and they're asking for more specific details. Unfortunately, one of the main things that they need for the special access drug program is some results of some clinical trials, and there just haven't been clinical trials on Ibogaine. Not extensive enough yet, however. There was an attempt made back a few years ago, but it wasn't completed. So we're really trying to do what we can to get permission to work with Ibogaine here in Canada. And in the meantime, I've got about 250 people that I've given this medicine to, and some with varying degrees of success. Ibogaine seems to have anywhere from a 40 to 60% success rate, anecdotally, of treating substance use disorder, which really blows other addiction statistics out of the water, but it's still not 100% success rate. So we're going to talk about some successes here today, but I wanted to just point out that these are some success stories, and not everybody sees this kind of success. As I'm working with people and deciding who to work with, I really, through the application process, really am looking for those people who are just really on the edge of needing the change, but haven't been able to get a leg up, because opiate use disorder in particular, it's got the physical withdrawal symptoms, which can be debilitating. And the physical withdrawal symptoms prevent a lot of people from being able to overcome their opiate use disorder, because they're in this, withdrawals have been described as the worst flu you've ever had times 1,000, that lasts for days and then even months with post-acute withdrawal symptoms. So somebody with opiate use disorder, when they're experiencing that kind of pain and withdrawal, and they know that all it will take is a tiny little bit more opiate to get rid of that pain for a little while, that makes it very tempting for that to happen. I see a question coming up right away here saying, does it work for alcohol addiction? It does work for alcohol addiction. The thing with alcohol addiction is you need to detox yourself prior to the Ibogaine experience, because an alcohol detox can be deadly in and of itself. So we need people to come off of booze for at least a week prior to an Ibogaine treatment. Works well for stimulants, works well for a lot. I'll tell you what it doesn't work awesome with is prescription drugs that are not opiate. So something like a benzodiazepine, it doesn't work very well for that. There's other prescription meds. I basically, when I'm working with people, I ask them to get off any prescriptions that they're on. So we will get to the questions that are coming up a little later on in our broadcast here, but I wanted to introduce my awesome panelists, some very dear friends of mine now. I read Johann Hari wrote a book about addiction, and he talked about how the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, the opposite is community. And that's one of the most beautiful things about working with this medicine, and the way that I have is I've become friends with a lot of these people who have come through our program, and really dear friends, and I count these three guys as that. And I just wanted to say again, before we get further into introductions here, is we're going to have another kind of a part two. The evolution of this broadcast on Iboga is going to be in a couple of weeks from now, Thursday the 27th, I believe is the date. And that's going to be an all-female panel. So that's going to have a physician, Dr. Pam Crisco, a founding board member of the Canadian Psychedelic Association. She's going to have my friend Maria and my friend Robin, and then one of Robin's friends is going to be on, and they've all been transformed with Iboga as well. Robin Howard's actually a practitioner with Iboga. Her husband and her, Mark Howard, run Iboga Soul, and that was they were featured in the movie Dosed. If you haven't checked out Dosed yet, and this is an interesting topic to you, you should definitely check out Dosed. It's at dosedmovie.com. I'm featured in that as well. So great movie, and we're going to have some of her wisdom on this panel. And Pam Crisco, Dr. Crisco, she admittedly doesn't know too much about Ibogaine, but she's super curious as an MD to know more. So that's going to be a really interesting panel. So make sure you tune into that. And I just want to quickly now introduce my my good friend Aaron. Welcome, Aaron.
Hey, Trevor.
Yeah, good to see you. My good friend Cameron, welcome, sir. And next I'm going to go to Fawad, and we're going to hear from Fawad here first, because my brother, he is a trooper. He's super passionate about getting the word out about Ibogaine. So passionate that it is 3 a.m. in Istanbul, where he is right now. He is a travel agent extraordinaire, taking people on these incredible tours of the world. and he just did a 16-hour tour around Istanbul today, and it's 3 a.m. So he's obviously a very tired man, but passionate about this medicine. So wants to be here to share his story, but we're gonna let him go a little early here so he can go and get some sleep. But brother, why don't I'm gonna put you on I'm gonna pin your video so you're the one everybody sees. And why don't you tell us a bit about your story, man? Because it's really unique. And no, sadly, it's not unique. I think it's what the part of it for me that is unique that before you got physically hooked to opioids, you had never had a drink of alcohol or done any drug before in your life, because you are such a devout Muslim. So why don't you take it from there, brother? Introduce yourself and share your story. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me today, Trevor. And it's an understatement as to who Trevor is. I mean, this individual is basically my guardian angel. That's what I call him. I mean, he saved my life. And being a devout Muslim, I truly believe that he was sent by God for me. And so I am super, super passionate. And that's why I'm here at 3 a.m. I wouldn't do it for anyone else, but for you, Trevor. So
thanks, brother.
So yeah, basically, my story isn't really unique. Now that I'm involved in trying to do my part with respect to addictions and forced addictions, but it is unique from a perspective that I am a devout Muslim, and I come from an Orthodox Muslim family, and I was the prize child of my family. I did everything by the book. I went to boarding school. I memorized the whole Quran. I'm authorized in the community to lead the congregations. I take, my main bread and butter is taking people on sacred religious tours around the world. And so I take pilgrims to Mecca every year, with the exception of this year. And just as a caveat, just have to excuse myself. I am tired, number one, and number two, I am recovering from Bell's palsy. So you're going to have to excuse some of my slur and my facial expressions as well. But yeah, my story started in 2012 of December. I took the family to Orlando, and I had a fantastic vacation planned for the family, and I couldn't even reach Disney World. I got to the parking lot, and I had this severe pain right in the middle of my stomach, and it was diagnosed as pancreatitis, which was later diagnosed as chronic pancreatitis. I'd never in my life touched any sort of drugs, any alcohol, nothing that was significant enough to mention. And so I had my first introduction to opioids in 2012, December. And that was due to the pancreatitis attack that I had had. And then I had 7 more that following year, from January 2013 onwards. And basically, they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And the medical system just continued to prescribe opioids, oxycodone and oxyneo. And to be honest, I was so naive that I was told to use it every 4 to 6 hours as needed. And so 3 years into using and it not working every month or two, and going back to my doctor and asking him, telling him that, listen, it's not working anymore. All they would do is just continuously increase the dosage. And that led to me basically, fast forward 3 years later, it led to me discovering what withdrawals were, because it was Christmas Eve on December 2015, and I just taken my last dose that was in my bottle, and my wife told me, you're out of medication, and I said, okay, well, I said, haven't you ever gone without medication for a day? I said, I'll be fine. We'll just go in on the 26th on Boxing Day and get it refilled from the doctor. And so the 24th evening, when it wore off, I spent Christmas basically locked in my room, begging my wife to beat me over the head with a bat, because I didn't know what was going on with me. My whole body was on fire, every single bone. I was throwing up left, right, center. I had no control over my bowels anymore. And I'd locked myself in the room because I didn't want my children to see me like this. I have 3 beautiful children. And, my wife quickly Googled and searched up what was going on with me. And she said, you're going through withdrawals. And so this is the condition. I ended up going into the doctors the next morning. And he wrote the prescription immediately, told me I should have gone to the hospital. And he said, you're basically addicted and dependent on this medication. You shouldn't have been off of it at all. And I said, I've been on it for 3 years. I didn't know that this was addictive. I was never told that it was addictive. Um, and so then became the story of me chasing, because at that point I realized that I was addicted, and I was, like a squirrel protecting my nuts, like, everything I'd gathered, all the medication that I had, I was always protecting it, making sure I had enough. And that just became like the mission of my life. Fast forward a little bit more to May of 2016, my doctor gets audited and by the College of Physicians, and they basically, one of the 5 files that they took out of the clinic was mine, and it turns out that I was being given terminally ill cancer patient dosage after being on opioids for about 4 years at that point. And they gave him an ultimatum that said, you need to get him off within 3 to 6 months, or else you'll lose your license. And so began my story of extreme withdrawals, because they started chopping my dosage down ridiculously. And I was in constant withdrawal, which eventually pushed me into begging and pleading and fighting with my doctors, and to no avail. At that point, I was forced to go to the streets, and I had no clue what to do. I never, interacted with such, such individuals. And luckily, I found an honest person who said they needed to verify the kind of medicine that I was on. And they continued to give me the same medicine, the drugs that they were reducing, and my doctor didn't know. I ended up spending around 40 grand over 8 months, about 5 grand a month, to just refill the difference in my prescription. The last dosage that I took before my guardian angel entered my life, Mr. Trevor Millar, was 55 pills, so over half a gram of oxy in a day. That's what I would take. And what's interesting is, I shouldn't have been alive. I was passing out every night on my balcony. My wife would find me there, and it was, in my belief, it was God that kept me alive, and that's why I'm still here today. But the interesting part of my story is how I discovered Iboga. I was searching for solutions for months on end, how to kick this addiction, and I couldn't find any information other than rehab. And I was like, you know what? I'm no drug addict. I'm not going to rehab. I haven't done anything wrong. Why should I be put in this position? That's what was going through my mind. And so nothing about Iboga or Ibogaine ever came up. And so there was a point in time, I'm not going to go through the details, but it is interesting how I ended up in San Francisco in 2007, 16, I believe it was. Yeah, December of 2016. It was December 31st, and we just come back from the fireworks. We were supposed to go back home to Vancouver, and the next day, and came back to the hotel, couldn't fall asleep, popped a few pills, and sat there watching Law and Order. Law and Order episode started discussing Iboga, and so I and Iboga in relation to heroin. So after I watched the episode, I ended up telling my wife, I said, heroin, oxy, same family. I think there's something here, and I think that's why we're in San Francisco for this moment. I think I found my solution. So I started researching, and lo and behold, Trevor's Liberty route came up, and I gave him a shout. He was in Australia at the time, gave me a call, and from Australia, and this is how dedicated this man is. I just left him a voice message, told him, I said, this is my situation. And he called me from Australia, and the rest is history. In March of 2017, I went to Liberty Route, and I was supposed to stay 10 days. I ended up staying 8 days. And Trevor can probably joke about the reasons as to why I left after 8 days. But yeah, it was a miracle. I mean, I went from 55 pills to 0. And not only that, my chronic pancreatitis just miraculously disappeared. And so I've been clean for 3.5 years. I don't take any medication whatsoever anymore. I've lost complete faith in the medical system. I do take, herbs, and I've gone the natural way. And yeah, it's amazing. I mean, this is just the actual facts that I'm speaking about, but the psychedelic side, the spiritual journey that I went on, I'm actually currently writing a book about it. I have a ghostwriter in Malaysia that's writing it for me, and it changed my life forever. I went from being an Orthodox Sunni Muslim to being a Sufi Muslim, and my connection with God is more stronger than ever, and it's all due thanks to Trevor Millar and Liberty Root and Iboga. It's a divine plant for me. And if you're struggling, there's a solution. It's waiting right there for you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, brother. I love your story. It's so compelling. It's, sadly, of course, as we all know, there's such a stigma that comes with substance use disorder, and people often are quick to blame the person who is addicted, and it's not that simple. There's so many things that go into every single story, and yours is a great example. And the fact that you have really become such a champion for this medicine, I can't thank you enough. You were on a panel with me at the Cannabis and Hemp Expo one year. And can you share more about what you're doing within your own community around substance use disorder and bringing awareness to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so our community is, we're way behind on these kind of matters. There's a lot of stigmas in our community, and so being in a position of religious leadership, I thought there's no better way to connect with the community. So we started with just general awareness across the mosques in the Lower Mainland, and which eventually led to the creation of the MCC, which is the Muslim Care Center, and that's downtown on the east side. And from there, we ended up creating the MCC Addictions and Recovery division, and now we're doing tours across pretty much Canada to mosques, and just to inform people that this is a real issue, and stop blaming it on demon possessions, or stop hiding the fact that your child or your loved one or your husband or wife or whoever it is addicted and they need help. And that was the main thing. It was just creating awareness that if I'm an imam, like a priest in my community, and I can get addicted, anyone else can get addicted, right? So we started that, and now we've got a whole set of resources there to help. And Trevor was instrumental in helping us with that as well, getting us in touch with some resources, and we continue to send people to Trevor as well for consultations and some guidance. So it's been a great thing. It's been a great thing that came together, and we're continuing to do the work. And now we have other cities, other boards from the Muslim community that are interested in taking our model and applying it out there as well across Canada.
Beautiful. Such good work, my brother. I'll let you go here in a minute, but you've got so much wisdom to share. What you said about your spirituality kind of before and after. I remember, as I've told to a few people recently in preparation for this, I remember before I ever gave you any Ibogaine, I said to you, I'm going to show you what the Prophet Muhammad saw. And I remember you said to me after the journey, yeah, I was pissed off at you when you said that, but you were right. So maybe you could just share how your spirituality has been flavored by this experience.
So, yeah, you're absolutely right. I was super pissed off. I didn't say anything because I needed a cure. So I said, man, this guy has a cure. Let him take jabs at me. But when I went through the psychedelic journey, it was way beyond what you had stated. And it was reality for me. It still is a reality, and I can't undo it. And I love it, and I won't ever let go of it. But yeah, so being an Orthodox Muslim meant, and anyone can relate to this, any Christian, any Jew, anyone from any religious, any Buddhist, you're raised with a set of values, and I call them the textbook values and beliefs. And so for me, God was a textbook identity. And so I believed in it. I was strong in my faith. I thought I was, but I really had no connection to God. And so after going through Ibogaine, that textbook identity became a realization. And so it went from, believing that there is Allah, there is God, and I don't know about him. I don't know anything. Basically, I don't know who he is, but I believe in him. I believe that he's the one God. And then actually being able to talk to him and feel him and realize him and actualize, that's what made me a Sufi. It just gave me an endless connection to the main source. And that's how I live my life now. And it's beautiful. It's amazing. I think that was the biggest gift that I got out of Ibogaine, and not getting rid of the addiction. The addiction was the secondary benefit, but the main benefit for me was the relationship I gained with God.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Can you, maybe everybody wants to know, what's an Iboga experience like? Can you try and describe some of the places you went? You were an exciting person to treat, I think, because of your deep spiritual kind of background, because you really got hit with the Holy Spirit, as it were, through the process. So can you share about a bit about your process itself?
Yeah, I'll tell you guys, it wasn't easy.
Mm-hmm.
It was the scariest thing I ever did in my life, and that's the truth. Because you have to understand, I had never interacted with drugs or any sort of losing control of oneself, and that was the biggest thing. And that's what, for me, the religion that I belong to is Islam, and that means submission in Arabic. And so when I took Iboga, I had to submit, and that's what Trevor kept on telling me, was you just got to let go. And I didn't understand it until I kept on resisting. And the minute I let go and I submitted, it was the best thing that ever could have happened to me. But and anyone planning to do Iboga, I that's the same advice I would give to you: is just submit, just go with the flow. It is very difficult. It's not something that you would want to do recreationally or you would want to do again and again and again. Yeah, for me, I'd probably never do it again. Um, but I got what I wanted from it, and yeah, the experience was amazing. Like for me, I seen things like, you know, yeah, all the unanswered questions that I had, I got answers to, and even from a religious perspective, and then all the things that I, from being bullied when I was younger, um, to all the wrongs that I had committed in my life. Um, all those things came up and I had to deal with them accordingly. And you just, it pushes you into a corner where you become this spiritual warrior and you pull out your sword and you just have to rip apart all the negative stuff that happens or happened to you or you did in your life. And it's difficult to deal with that. It's easy to say, for us to sit here and for me to tell you now, but it was the most difficult thing, but with the greatest reward ever. The payoff is amazing. It's like you hit the lottery, and it's a lottery that is limitless. It's never ending.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, brother. I think you bring up a really good point that I should mention is that Iboga and Ibogaine are potentially dangerous. So this is, I've been known to encourage people to take a mushroom or two if they feel so called, even if they want to do that on their own. But I would never suggest that somebody does Iboga or Ibogaine on their own. There's a bunch of medical tests we run people through before we give them medicine. We have a registered nurse present during the administration of the medicine. And those are very, very, very important components. And I've given this medicine to a lot of people, and it's amazing how every single person reacts differently. So you need to be a really good space holder and know how to be there for whatever can arise. So I think I'll just, there's a couple of questions I've seen come up for you here. I think this comes with a smiley face after it, Fawad, but is Iboga halal?
That question to me is irrelevant. It's beyond halal for me.
Right on. I love that. The question is, do you blame your doctor for not explaining all the addictive properties of the drug he prescribed and all the side effects?
I've forgiven my doctor, so I think that should answer the question.
Yeah, good stuff. Beautiful. All right. Yeah, I see another quick question. Is ayahuasca the same thing? Ayahuasca does have powerful anti-addictive properties. It's good for cocaine and alcohol as an example, but nothing gets to the issue of helping people overcome opiate withdrawal like Ibogaine. I've worked with ayahuasqueros, and somebody comes to them who has an opioid addiction, they'll send them to the Ibogaine provider first. Once they've gone through that, then they can go into ayahuasca. And I think Aaron's going to be able to speak about that. So Fawad, I'm gonna let you go to sleep, brother. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I love you. You've become such a dear friend, and it's such a treat to spend this time with you. And thank you so much for sharing your journey.
Thank you, brother, and thank you to Aaron and Cameron as well for being patient and allowing me to go first and listening patiently. I'm sorry. I would love to stay. I'm going to watch the recording afterwards. Perfect. And hear your guys' stories. But at this point, I'm beyond fumes right now.
Perfect. Get some good and well-deserved sleep, Fawad. Thank you so much for being here, man.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, what a great start. Again, this is the first in a now two-part series on Iboga and its effects. And today we're focused on substance use disorder in particular, but on Thursday, the 27th of this month, we're going to have 4 female panelists, and they are going to talk about their experience with Iboga. And one of those people will be with substance use disorder. My friend Maria, it helped her overcome her substance use disorder. It also somewhat miraculously fixed her endometriosis. So she was able to have a child shortly after leaving Liberty Root, which is amazing. I've never heard that before, but glad for her. So she's going to share that story next Thursday. And then we've got an Iboga provider, and then somebody who was really helped for more psycho-spiritual or kind of mental health issues through her experience with Iboga. So please tune in there. And now we've got Aaron and Cameron here. I think I'm going to turn to Cameron next. If I'll allow you to unmute yourself. It looks like I need to do that. And yeah, man, thank you so much for being here. Again, all three of you guys have such unique stories. So when I put out the call and you guys were the first three to get back to me, I thought, wow, what a perfect mix, because you've all come to Iboga from very different places. And yeah, man, I'll put your video on Spotlight here and you can share a little bit about your life, Cameron.
Yeah, my story is definitely a little different. You know, I'm 24 now. I started using drugs around age 12, 13, but it really took off when I was probably about 14 years old. One of my friends I hung out with, he was, you know, crushing up and snorting these Oxycontin pills. I'd never heard of it before. I had no idea what it was, and wasn't really interested, didn't partake the first couple times. And then one day we were at a buddy's house, and yeah, I ended up buying one and tried it, and it was just game over. Was instantly just hooked, you know, using it every day. And like one thing Fawad touched on, I'll touch on too, is you know, we had no idea what withdrawal was. We had no idea how addictive it was, you know, because I think the first person who had it that my friend got it from, you know, was prescribed it by his doctor for an injury, and, you know, no mention of the addictive qualities of it. So yeah, anyways, you know, I was using oxys, and then I can't remember what year it was. What was it, like 2011 or something? Health Canada was like, oh my God, what is happening with this Oxycontin problem? And they banned oxys. They brought in those Oxy Neos, and those Oxy Neos had that tamper-proof, you know, bit to them, and just didn't hit like the old oxys did. And I was the first of my friends to, and then everyone else did soon after. We just, you know, went out, and same guy you're buying oxys from also has heroin, and it's cheaper and it's stronger, and you know, it basically feels like the same thing. So switched to that, you know, was doing that, was just smoking it at first. And I remember then all of a sudden one of my friends died. And we found out after he died that there was like another drug cut into it called fentanyl. We'd never heard of fentanyl before then too. And, you know, and then as the overdose crisis started, it just kind of went out of control. And, you know, yeah, people just, you know, my friends just started dying around me, and my addiction got worse. And, you know, eventually started injecting this, you know, this fentanyl heroin mix that was being sold, which eventually just became just fentanyl with, you know, some cut added to it. But, you know, eventually I was doing stimulants and stuff as well, but eventually the down on its own just didn't do the trick anymore. So I had to start mixing cocaine into my injections. And basically, you know, long story short, by the end of it, like, I'd reached a point where, you know, like I couldn't even work a normal job anymore. You know, like I would, like, you know, work with my family, get fired, work with another job, get fired. You know, to afford my habit, I had to do other things, you know, shouldn't have been doing to pay for it. And, you know, and I was just like injecting, I can't believe I'm alive. I was injecting insane amounts of drugs. Like I was injecting, like, you know, large mixes, like every, like, you know, couple hours, and then more cocaine in between, because cocaine doesn't last very long, right? So you keep coming down. And I just had tried everything. I went to rehab twice, you know, spent like a year of my life in total in rehab, like tried Narcotics Anonymous, you know, everything I did, I couldn't stay off for like a week or two max. I think the longest was like 3 weeks without either heroin or cocaine. And I went to see my doctor one day, and my doctor's like, here, I want you, this is a phone number, I want you to call it. And he's like, he's like, it's not fully tested. I shouldn't really say do it, but I'm saying do it. So call this phone number. I said, okay. And, through that phone number, I got introduced to Trevor. And yeah, when I met Trevor and he kind of explained the deal to me, and he said, look, it's going to be really hard, and but this will help your problem. And I honestly, going into it, I wasn't really convinced. I was like, might work, might not, but I had nothing to lose really. So I was like, Bob, let's do it. I'll jump right in. And yeah, it wasn't easy. It really wasn't, but it was the best decision I ever made. Like Trevor told me, he's like, when you take the first dose of Iboga, he's like, after 45 minutes, you're oh, this is, sorry, it's a big important part I left out. It took a long time for me to prepare. So what Trevor told me to do is he had me go on prescription morphine instead of street drugs. And I had to lower the morphine over time. So I was able to get myself down from, over a gram of down a day to just 100 milligrams of morphine per day. And that really helped me out with the treatment because he was able to give me the minimal medicine possible to get me through it. So I was able to get through it with just because Ibogaine, like Fawad said, it's not something you take recreationally. It's a very difficult experience, but because of this preparation, I was able to take the smallest amount possible, and I got through it with minimal discomfort. And yeah, but I noticed I was sold 45 minutes after I took that first dose, and my withdrawal went away. I was like, all right, let's do this. This is gonna work. I can feel it. And can we take a little detour too, actually? Because it wasn't just Ibogaine that I took. I also, Ibogaine really helped me with the opiates, but like Trevor's mentioned, it doesn't work well for cocaine. Like I was still thinking like, oh, I want to do some coke. I still had those thoughts in my mind, but I took another psychedelic. It's called 5-methoxydimethyltryptamine. And that was probably one of the most significant moments of my life. It just, I can't really describe the experience, but the gist of it is, I just went to this place where, I met myself, learned to love myself. All these feelings that I didn't even realize I was covering up with drugs just, flew out, and I came out of it just I went in one person and just came out totally different, and yeah, I owe it all to meeting Trevor. My life is great now. I never thought I'm about to turn 25. I was so convinced. I was like, I'm not going to make it to 25. No way. But here I am. I made it. So yeah, that's my story.
Beautiful, brother. That's, yeah, a few parts of your story are really significant for me. For one, the angel that was your doctor, we won't say his name because he could get in trouble for having recommended something like Ibogaine. Mm-hmm. But, I've had the chance to speak to him, and he just saw how desperate you were, how much you did want to change, but just couldn't get that leg up. So the fact that your physician made that referral and then would work with us through that tapering protocol. So over the years that I've been working with Ibogaine, I've realized that the more work a person can do prior to arrival, the easier their journey is going to be for all of us. So another good, fortunate thing that I've stumbled upon is high dose oral vitamin C works really well to help people taper off opiates. So that in conjunction with a taper protocol has been beautiful. So yeah, you came in on only 100 milligrams of the Cadian morphine when you arrived, and yeah, exceptional, really easy treatment for you because you did put in that work. I always say that Iboga is like Santa Claus. It knows whether or not you've been naughty or nice because you know whether or not you've prepared for this situation well enough or not. So really proud of you. And I'll speak about the 5-MeO-DMT component as well. So 5-MeO-DMT is an unregulated substance here in Canada, so it's not illegal to work with. It's the toad is another word for it because it comes from the venom on the back of a toad in the Sonoran Desert. If you dry out that venom and then take it in I think it's the most powerful psychedelic experience on earth personally. And there's a synthesized version of that, and that's what we used with you. And yeah, man, you had the most beautiful experience with that stuff. He vaped it. He was still, I was kind of just sitting beside him with my eyes closed, kind of meditating. Then I heard him rustling, and he sat up slowly. He looked me in the eye. He grabs my shoulders and he goes, "Wow!" It was the most authentic wow I have ever heard in my life, man. And yeah, it's been wonderful to see your progress since. I know, speaking to your mother, she's telling me it's, I've got my son back. It's like he's like he was before he ever did a drug. I know your relationship with your parents and family has gotten better overall. So I'm really, really proud of you, man. And thank you for the thanks you're giving me, but you did all the hard work. Fawad did all the hard work. Aaron did all the hard work. So if you can just hang on, and we'll take some questions from the crowd in a little bit, but I want to introduce my main man, Aaron. Aaron is somebody that I met through the downtown east side of Vancouver, through the Vancouver area network of drug users. We did some meetings in there. We were introduced through a mutual friend, Cynthia, who was a resident of the downtown east side. And my company, Liberty Root, really grew out of a personal mission I started myself on after 9/11. I was really, really disheartened with the state of the world and started looking at different ways that I might be able to give back. I was new to Vancouver at the time. It looked like it might be able to use some help. So rightly or wrongly, I just started poking around, looking at different ways that I might be able to help. And that essentially turned into about a 10-year networking and research project until 2009. Ibogaine came on the radar as a way to potentially help. My business was formed in 2012 once I met my business partner who knew what he was doing with the medicine. And we always set aside a portion of the profits to make sure that we could do pro bono work. And the downtown east side is the neighborhood that inspired this business. So through my relationship with VANDU, the Vancouver area network of drug users, I started introducing myself to the membership there, saying, look, if you're interested in using Ibogaine to overcome your substance use disorder, I am going to be, more than happy to try and help you get there. What I'm going to need to see from you, though, is I'm going to need you to show up for a weekly meeting for about 90 days so we can get to know each other, so we can make sure we put in a strategy around your aftercare, about getting you, Aaron, as an example, had to come off methadone before doing this. So we worked with a physician to make that happen. So Aaron, I've told enough of the story. Why don't you, my main man, tell your own story? Because it is a compelling one.
Perfect. Thank you, Trevor. Thanks for having me here. It has been quite a journey. I can't believe that I've known you for over 8 years now, but it's been an incredible journey. I'm just going to share a little bit about myself. I suffered from undiagnosed trauma, and I self-medicated with heroin for the longest time, and I eventually ended up in Vancouver and on the methadone program, or opiate replacement therapy, and all that did was got me stuck down there. I ended up spending 10 years of my life in the downtown east side, unable to deal with my trauma, unable to get out of the downtown east side. I was subjected to all sorts of different various drugs and the whole lifestyle down there. I was homeless for a number of years. I completely isolated from my family, from life. I really could not take care of myself. And suddenly I got introduced to Trevor and this Ibogaine treatment. And that's how it all started, actually. We went through, like I said, or Trevor said, about 90 days of preparation for the first Ibogaine treatment I took. And I'm telling you, it was a really rough experience. I had put my body and myself through so much that the process is really, really hard on me physically. But that was the beginning of my healing process. I had a couple of relapses over the next few years, and that's part of my story too. But the Ibogaine allowed me to start addressing issues that I needed to address. It allowed me to have that space to look within myself and start healing. From the Ibogaine, I was led to ayahuasca and actually 5-MeO, and all these plant medicines, gave me little glimpses of the work that I needed to do. Like, they showed me what I needed to work on and what was blocking myself from healing and becoming fully integrated with my life, with myself, with society. And like I said, I was the opiate replacement therapy when I ended up on that stuff for 10 years, and it didn't allow me to address any of the trauma that I was going through. I couldn't recognize it. I just couldn't. It was just like just numbing effect on myself. And until I actually got introduced to psychedelics through Liberty Roots, that's when my healing process really took off. And eventually, just like Fawad was saying, I'm now able to, I knew what it meant to, God was an intellectual concept with me, but until I actually went through these processes of, the Ibogaine, the ayahuasca, 5-MeO, I actually was able to start to breathe and actually be able to enter into that great deep silence and experience God and begin to connect with my life. And I've got myself out of the downtown east side. I've got myself full employment now. I'm out kayaking. Like I say, I'm able to now experience God on a really deep personal level, and I'm just totally connected to my life. And I can't say enough about like the psychedelic approach to overcoming addiction. I don't know. I think that's all I really have to say, Trevor.
That's so good. Well, why don't I'd like to kind of highlight the fact that this for you wasn't just a one stop at the Ibogaine provider's place and all of a sudden I'm forever better. The Ibogaine, from what I understand, helped you along in that journey, but you then followed up with it was a bit of a tragedy. We spent all this time prior to you coming in for this experience, and we made sure that you had a good place to land afterwards. We made sure that a whole bunch of things were in order before we sent you back. We didn't just want to drop you back into a homeless situation on the downtown east side, but unfortunately, your housing arrangement fell apart shortly thereafter. About a week or two after you were with us, you ended up in a homeless shelter again. You ended up using drugs again shortly thereafter. We brought you in for another Ibogaine session about a year later. I think that hit the spot a little bit more. But then, it was the addition of ayahuasca, which is another Peruvian medicine. You've participated in ceremonies like that. It was really not just the Ibogaine experience, but the whole plant medicine journey, the whole road of healing through plant medicines that seems to have done it for you. Would that be accurate?
Exactly, Trevor. It was a real journey for me. It was like peeling the onion, and it was like step by step. I had really done so much damage through drug addiction, and even this opiate replacement therapy was really a challenge to overcome all of this and where I was in my life. And so it took quite a few steps, and each different plant medicine or each different psychedelic added a piece to the puzzle and helped me to be able to face the trauma that was inside of me, that was holding me back from actually connecting with my life, and connecting with myself, and getting out of the downtown east side and that horror. So like you said, it was a journey. It was each different plant medicine added a different piece of the puzzle. But for me, Ibogaine was really the key component of it all, because it allowed me to withdraw from the opiates enough to just heal a little bit, step by step, and finally get healed.
Beautiful.
So
do you work, I think you work in more conventional recovery, or with people who are going through more conventional recovery right now, is that right?
absolutely.
How do you think kind of plant medicines can complement traditional recovery, the 12 steps as an example? I know that Bill W., the founder of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, his spiritual awakening happened through a datura experience, which was a psychedelic. Later in his years after founding Alcoholics Anonymous, he wanted LSD to become either step 0 or step 13 to really help people get that spiritual connection, because one of the steps is about connecting to a higher power. And a lot of people are really resistant to that concept of a higher power. I know Adrienne, who's featured in the Dosed movie, the 12 steps she tried again and again and again, but until she had that experiential realization of a higher power, they didn't do all that much for her. I'll take that back, actually. I'm sure it helped quite a bit, but it was the connection to God on an experiential level that allowed her to take the rest of those steps a lot more seriously. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely, and that's my story too. The Ibogaine and the psychedelics helped me actually experience this God, or experience this deep spiritual connection, that deep silence that I wasn't able to connect with. But the big thing about integrating this with the 12 steps, because the 12 steps and Ibogaine work perfectly together. There's such a resistance within the 12-step program to doing any kind of mood-altering drugs to help with the healing, that it's really hard to introduce that or just talk about that in that setting. But for me, I needed both those. I needed plant medicine and I needed 12 steps. I needed to do the work, and it was a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. Cool, man. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's been an honor. It would be an understatement to watch your journey and to be a part of your journey. You've just never given up. I remember early on when we started working together, I gave you a bunch of books to read. You read them all. You started incorporating the ideas that were featured in those books. I can say this is true for Cameron as well, actually. I give most of my clients access to my Audible account with a lot of audiobooks on there. And Cameron's really dived into those as well. So it's really, I've always been looking for the special sauce that's going to make every Ibogaine treatment work. And I think I boiled it down to a nautical metaphor is, number one, you need to lift your anchors, lift whatever is holding you back in life. And thank God for psychedelic psychotherapy, because that really helps people lift these anchors. Step two is you need to know which direction you want to go in. Like what direction do you want to sail your ship? And that might just be towards something like happiness or, vitality. But you got to know which way you want to head. And then you've got to turn on the engine. You've got to get momentum going in that direction. And you, Aaron, were, one of the ways I came up with that formula, because you really did that. Like, you read the book, and then so much so that, I met you on the downtown east side, and a few years later, you're calling me up and saying, "Hey, Trev, I've got $10,000 saved up and I'm looking for investment advice." So like, just such an example of, kind of rags to riches. And while you might not be as wealthy as Jeff Bezos, nor am I, your spirit has gone from rags to riches. Like, you are an inspiring man. And the kayaking, I love that you've taken up kayaking so well and are doing that all the time. And you did the what's the name of the meditation? Sorry. Vipassana, 10-day silent meditation. Like, I've been a spiritual student for 20 years now, and that still scares the heck out of me. So you've done that multiple times. You're a really, really great example. So thank you, Aaron. I'm gonna pull up some questions here. Will we have access to the recording? Yes. People are also looking for information on how to join the next webinar. There's a couple of different ways. Go to, the way I would really like you to do it is if you can go to psychedelicassociation.net, and on that page, near the top of the page, you can leave us your details. And from there, the Psychedelic Association will email you for any of these webinars that we do. Number two, you can just go to our Facebook page, sure you like the Canadian Psychedelic Association Facebook page. And from there, you will be notified when we're going live with things. Another thing you can do is, while you're on that psychedelicassociation.net Facebook page, you can become a friend of the CPA, and that's for a small donation of $50 or $100. This is our first attempt at membership. We're about to have a much more robust membership program, but you can get in right now for $50 or $100, and you're going to be grandfathered in to our more substantial membership. So please think of doing that. Where does your money go? It goes to supporting things like this. We've got a great team that's in place to do things like this. And I can, the other thing we've been working on as the Canadian Psychedelic Association for the last 3 months is our petition to decriminalize plant medicines, sponsored by Nanaimo Green Party MP Paul Manley. And that petition closed today at 1:34 Eastern Standard Time, and we've got just shy of 15,000 signatures. So thank you everybody that signed that petition. It will be read in the House of Commons, and I'm told by Ilan, who is the Chief of Staff for MP Manley, that it has the 8th most signatures that have been received on a petition during this government's time in office. So really well done, everybody that signed that petition. It's just one step in a good direction. And just because the petition is going to be read in the House of Commons doesn't mean that the decriminalizenature.ca team is done at all. We're going to be lobbying politicians until that's read. We basically are not going to stop until plant medicines are at least decriminalized, if not legalized in a really good way. No, it's not $50 for a lifetime. I think we might be switching to a monthly membership fee, Zoe. So anyway, you'll be grandfathered in for the first year or so by signing up for the Friends of the CPA package. Does LSD help with opiate addiction? The downtown east side has legal heroin and Cadian, Suboxone, methadone. Why not LSD for that matter, Ibogaine as well? LSD, again, is great for interrupting negative patterns, but in fact, Canada had a massive LSD study in the early 60s where more than 750 people were given LSD for alcohol use disorder, and they had, I think, a 56% success rate on that. But LSD just doesn't hit those opiate receptors again. So it might help change a person's behaviors or outlook on life, but unless it hits those opiate receptors and helps people through the withdrawal, then people are going to be compelled to going back to the opiate again. If anybody has any questions for Aaron or Cameron, please let me know. From Richard, as a recovering addict myself, I know I would try anything so long as it got me high. So Ibogaine, mushrooms, MDMA, I would be willing to try. So that's, you know, maybe Cameron, you can speak to that. Like, you have been heavily dependent on substances like cocaine, like opiates. I know another awesome figure in the recovery community is Russell Brand, and Russell Brand says he won't try the psychedelics because he just thinks he'll like them too much and he'll be off to the races again. Can you speak to that, Cameron? What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's if you've never had a psychedelic experience, it's hard to understand the difference between psychedelics and, say, hard drugs such as heroin or cocaine. But it's you don't get that like it's how do I describe it? It's like oh, this is how I'll describe it. When you do drugs like heroin and cocaine, you get what you want, but when you take psychedelics, you get what you need. That's how I'll describe it. Like it's not it's the reason they're not addictive is they don't have those, like, you're not just like, oh, okay, now everything's covered up. It's like, no, you get confronted. Like we were just talking about LSD. Like, I've taken LSD as a medicine since Iboga, and that's like one thing it really does is like it lets me check myself, and like I've had an experience where, not to get into details, but where I was confronted with, the slippery slope decisions I was making, and really just helped me be like, okay, we're gonna cut this off right now. Afterwards.
Beautiful. Yeah, they have largely anti-addictive properties. Even when exploring mushrooms as a youth, it's not like you go on a big mushroom journey and then wake up the next morning and say, yeah, let's do that again. It's kind of the opposite of that. Does Iboga help with long-term marijuana addiction? How about with behavioral addictions like gambling? And I did have another question come up in the Q&A around this. I'll read this question as it was written by an anonymous attendee, but it says, I don't want to minimize substance addiction. I have a serious question, but I don't want to offend people who have realer problems. I'm wondering if Iboga would be helpful for food addiction. It may sound like nothing to real addicts, but I'm destroying my life. And I would just say, for one, like, if it's destroying your life, it's just as serious as any other addiction. Like, don't feel as though you've got a lesser problem. You've got something that you would like to overcome. And that, I love Gabor Mate's definition of an addiction, is something that you are compelled to do even though you know it's destroying your life, but you just can't stop. So definitely, don't diminish your problem, please. And yes, I have seen Iboga and other psychedelics. They're just miraculous pattern interrupters. If you are running with a certain momentum in your life and you can't seem to overcome that momentum, the power of medicines like even magic mushrooms in a therapeutic setting or LSD in a therapeutic setting, they can help you see beyond those patterns and let you see above the fence to something new and say, oh yeah, I might want to live that way instead. Whereas prior to that, you might not feel a choice. Could you maybe speak to that, both of you guys, the fact, what Iboga, what these medicines seem to do is they introduce a choice again, and where you didn't have a choice before that. Cameron, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, that's like, trying to think of how to put it to words here. Yeah, like that reminds me a lot of like, yeah, that 5-methoxy DMT experience was, like when I went into it, it was just, my brain was just wired like, like I'm addicted to drugs and this is the way it is. And, my only choice is to get high, to get by. But, I can't explain why. I know the experience I had, but obviously it did something in my brain where I came out of it. And it's, like, I can honestly say that I don't crave the drugs I was addicted to, but like you said, it gives me that choice. I still could, make the choice to use drugs, but I have the ability to say no now, which I never had that my whole life. It's ever since I first took drugs, never had the ability to say no. I can maybe say no for like 10 seconds and then it's over. But, now, like if I were to see, I just know inside, like if I were to see, these drugs, well, first of all, if I were to see the drugs, I would leave. But if for some reason I was trapped in a box with a guy with drugs, I know, I have the ability now to say no and make that choice. Yeah. Which I didn't have before.
What do you think about that, Aaron? Just the way these medicines affect your ability to make different decisions.
Yeah, for me, it was quite amazing. Like each different plant medicine allowed me to look at something else within me, like 5-MeO. I could see blockages that I was holding in my body that I was able to start releasing. Actually, I started doing massage therapy just because of the 5-MeO experience. And it was amazing. All these different psychedelics actually led me to Vipassana, and that silent meditation for 10 days, which allowed me to release blockages in my, in my solar plexus and in my shoulders that I was just hanging on to with dear life. But I didn't even know I was hanging on to them. But, like plant medicines allowed me to get a glimpse, and then doing the inner work, like the Vipassana with that allowed me to release huge amounts of luggage that I was carrying around in my body. Like I didn't even know that I was carrying them around. They were so much a part of me. So yeah, and actually as well, I mean, just I was able to see glimpses of the trauma that I was experiencing and slowly be able to actually look at them face to face. But it was a process, and each different plant medicine opened up a little different window, which allowed me to, I could breathe again.
Beautiful, beautiful. And sorry, I skipped half of that first question, the comment on marijuana and cannabis addiction. I'll be honest, Iboga, I haven't seen too much. I haven't treated many people for cannabis addiction with Iboga. I can speak from my own experience of somewhat problematic use with cannabis. It was actually ayahuasca and I just happened to do ayahuasca before I ever did Iboga. So maybe had I done Iboga first, it would have given me the same insight. But after my first ayahuasca experience, it was clear to me that it wasn't even the experience. It was speaking to the ayahuasquero afterwards and saying, well, what do you think about cannabis? And he said, well, I've never been a big fan, but working with this medicine in BC, I see a lot of people who have issues with cannabis. And he said, the couple things I can tell you about it is that it's sticky and it's seductive. And just him telling me that, it was like almost I knew my enemy, or I knew what I was up against there. And I was able to stop cannabis for 6 months straight then. And it comes and goes now. It just doesn't have that same compelling effect on me anymore. So I can definitely thank plant medicines for that. I also had an experience with Iboga. I did it with my friend Mark Howard at Iboga Soul. He wanted me to try it the way he works with it. He's been trained in Africa by a shaman there. And after that experience, or during that experience, a whole bunch of things came up around the way I was drinking. And I've never had anybody say, oh, Trevor, you have a drinking problem. I always kept my life together pretty well. I did work on cruise ships where it was my job to drink with passengers for a while. So on cruise ships, nobody's an alcoholic because everybody's an alcoholic. And after this Iboga experience, I just said, yeah, all this stuff came up around my drinking. And Mark said, well, there's an argument to be made that because of the nature of the work that we've chosen, we need to hold ourselves to a bit of a standard. And I got that. I said, yeah, maybe I'll stop drinking. So from that point on, I didn't drink for 3 years. And I've allowed it back in for special occasions here and there now. But again, my relationship to alcohol has completely changed thanks to these medicines. So would
Trevor,
Ibogaine?
if I could just throw in a quick anecdote. One thing, when I came into my Iboga experience, I just realized this now as we're talking about this. I was smoking marijuana every single day. And anecdotally, thinking about it now, since I finished the Iboga experience, it's dropped to once every week or even 2 weeks.
Wow.
So I don't know if it's because of the Iboga or just because of my general, lack of need to be high all the time. But, it is worth mentioning, I think.
Awesome. Thanks, brother. Yes. So I think we're going to wrap up here pretty quickly. I'm just going to... thanks for that, Caitlin. Iboga helped me so much with chronic symptoms from Lyme disease and addictive thought patterns. That's a great point. I can mention a few of the other things that Iboga has been known to work for that I've seen firsthand. I had somebody, it was this frail yet lovely woman who came to me in White Rock while we were operational with her family. Her father was there and they wanted a consultation. They came up from Washington State for the consultation, and her father had been treated for his chronic fatigue syndrome with Iboga. And I'm not even using fibromyalgia. That's what it was. I wasn't using the right term. Fibromyalgia. So he had a friend who was addicted to opiates because of his fibromyalgia. He went down to Mexico to get treated for with Iboga. After he got treated, his fibromyalgia disappeared. So then her father went down to Mexico. Same thing, his fibromyalgia disappeared. So they came to see if I could treat them for that. And I said, well, I've never, I can't make any promises that this is going to work because I've never heard of this before, but let's go in with some low dosing of the medicine. And sure enough, she had a really powerful week with me. A lot of trauma was released, some pretty intense nights. But she came in, something I always remember about her is she couldn't eat anything when she got to us. Like she could have cauliflower, a couple of vegetables, really some rice. Otherwise, her diet was completely limited. And the person who was working as my chef at the time kept asking her, can I get you some toast? And she's like, no, I can't eat toast. And then she totally gluten intolerant. And then a couple other times, just out of habit, the chef said, can I get you a piece of toast? And she finally got pissed off and she's like, no, I can't have toast. But after the Iboga journey, on the way out the door, she was eating toast. And she messaged me afterwards and she said, I'm sitting here with my girlfriend. We're sitting at a restaurant. I haven't been able to eat at a restaurant for 15 years. Thank you so much. So I've seen it work for fibromyalgia. And it's incredibly effective at treating Parkinson's disease as well in low doses. So the first gentleman who experienced this, he goes by patient D. He went to Mexico. They put him on a low dose protocol, meaning I think it started with 5 to 10 milligrams a day, which is a microdose. You can't even tell that you've taken anything. And after 14 days, he started feeling better. At the end of 30 days, all of the 12 symptoms that are used to measure Parkinson's disease had diminished. So remarkable. And he's still taking Ibogaine. He's doing wonderful. I provided the medicine for somebody else. And he was fairly young when he got diagnosed. And his famous line to me after taking Ibogaine consistently for some time is, and I know it's still the case for him, is he just says, Trevor, I should be getting worse, and I'm not. So really cool, because nothing really works to treat Parkinson's very well. A question about the use of Ibogaine with the addiction of alcohol. My brother was taken into a 2-week microdose to help him with his 20-year addiction. He's asking me to ask you about your thoughts on naloxone and the success rate concerning opiates versus alcohol. I'd also like to know your opinion on opiate agonist therapy, Suboxone, methadone. Thank you. So naloxone for treating different addictions. I have heard of, there's a gentleman I'm working with that's working towards doing an implant of naloxone to basically prevent you from getting high when you take naloxone. So I think there is something to be said for that. I think something like that in conjunction with Iboga, maybe after the Iboga journey, would be even better. The opiate replacement therapy like Suboxone and methadone, I think they're really good Band-Aids. I think they've saved a lot of lives. I think Aaron, you can speak more to this than I can, but Aaron said to me years ago that taking methadone is like putting a warm blanket on yourself and you just forget about everything else. So it's not complete vitality to me as far as I'm concerned. Suboxone, even, we have to get into the opioid racket a little bit, I guess, here. So there is, there's a huge, very profitable machine that keeps people on opiate replacement therapies. There are a lot of doctors and pharmacies who don't want people getting completely free of these substances because they add tremendous amounts of money to their bottom line. So Suboxone would work great to help people taper if they made it in the proper dosage size. So you can get down, you know, I've known people that are on 32 milligrams of Suboxone a day. That's crazy. But then they could slowly taper or relatively quickly taper down to the 2 milligram point, but that's the smallest dosage they make. And a jump off from 2 milligrams to 0 is really, really hard. So if they made those in, you know, 1.5 milligram doses, 1 milligram doses, 0.5 milligram doses, 0.25 milligram doses, then Suboxone would be a really cool tool. But those strips, those 2 milligram strips are so small, it's hard to cut those things in half. So I think if these pharmaceutical companies really cared about getting people off of opiates, there's a lot they could do to help that process, because it's that step from 2 milligrams to 0 that's really hard. Yeah, Aaron, do you want to speak about being on opiate replacement therapy for a long amount of time?
Yeah, like I said earlier, Trevor, that was the solution that was presented to me, opiate replacement therapy. And all it did for me was mask all the trauma that I had, that I was holding within myself, and it didn't allow me to heal. These days, for the most part, you can't even come into a detox center without hooking up to an opiate replacement therapy before you go in. So it's almost like a trap. Like for me, it didn't allow me to heal, and it just made things worse. It allowed everything else became even more acceptable. I mean, I was so numb. Like living in the East Side was acceptable to me, and it didn't allow for the healing process to take place.
Yeah, that's yeah. So the other component is that we have a tainted drug supply right now. So physicians, people in the medical field are terrified of helping people actually detox, because if they relapse, they're relapsing with fentanyl, whether it's fentanyl laced heroin or just straight fentanyl. And the dosage is hard to get straight. So your chance of overdosing after detoxing is very high. So that's something that I really had to drive into the people that I worked with, is like, look, Ibogaine's making you opiate naive. So if you take an opiate after this, your chances of killing yourself are very high. So it's good that's a good opportunity for Suboxone, actually, is to send somebody home with a bit of Suboxone, so that if they are going to relapse, they do it onto something that at least they know the dosage. So it's such a broad systemic issue that we're facing. I think we need to get to the point where any corporations that profit off of people's suffering are not allowed to operate anymore. And I think a lot of companies do profit off of people's suffering. And like I said, at the same time, it's very useful for a lot of people. Like if somebody calls me and says they want to do Ibogaine, and they're on a whole bunch of street drugs like Cameron was, I say, look, first you get to an opiate replacement. That is a good bridge. That's a good Band-Aid. But, you know, Cameron didn't want to stay on an opiate replacement for the rest of his life, nor did Aaron, nor do most people, I think. And I wouldn't even say most people. There's a lot of people that opiates are very important to them. And I don't think there's any such thing as a good drug or a bad drug. It's all the context in which that drug is used. So, so Parkinson's, I'll just do this last question here, then we'll wrap it up. So the Parkinson's, why does Ibogaine work for Parkinson's? Well, the way Ibogaine the reason they decided to use it on Parkinson's disease is somebody much smarter than I am, wrote a paper that said essentially that it is at least the dopamine system in these people who use drugs that is getting reset with Ibogaine. And it is the dopamine system in Parkinson's patients that's out of whack. So maybe Ibogaine would work for Parkinson's disease. And sure enough, it was a really good hypothesis. Why does Ibogaine seem to work for so many things? I've seen it bring viral counts down for hepatitis. I've seen it fix a woman's endometriosis. She will be on a webinar on the 27th. Who knows? Ibogaine is something that chemists call a dirty substance, meaning it hits so many different receptor points, the Ibogaine molecule, that it's really hard to study. Scientists like to have cleaner methods of action so they can really get to the bottom of what's going on. And that's just not immediately possible with Ibogaine. It's going to take a lot more research. So I'm also the chair of the board for MAPS Canada, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. And MAPS is really focused on research. And MAPS USA, while they're developing MDMA as a substance to be used as a prescription right now, I know that Rick Doblin, the founder, has his eyes set on studying Ibogaine next. So I am going to wrap this up. Thank you everybody who has been here watching. We are going to post this video. It's a shame we weren't able to get this on Facebook Live, because Facebook Live, we've learned, has a really good potential for organic reach. A lot of people get exposed to this topic, and Ibogaine's really a dark horse within the psychedelic space. Not a lot of people know about it, so we as the Canadian Psychedelic Association really want to bring awareness, because in the face of this opioid crisis, we feel like it's a massive tool that could be used. So you can support MAPS, you can support the Canadian Psychedelic Association. We are on a mission to make sure that everybody knows about the potential benefits of these substances. So please think about joining us at psychedelicassociation.net, mapscanada.org, Canadian Psychedelic Association Facebook page, and our decriminalizenature.ca website, where our first petition wrapped up, but I think there's going to be other petitions. We're going to keep going at this. So Cameron, so good to see you again, brother. Give my love to your family. Are you on Bowen Island right now?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, right on. We'll enjoy that beautiful property you guys have. Thank you so much for being here. Aaron, you are an inspiration for me and so many people that I know. I'm so glad that we got to share your story with so many more people now. Let's really get that story out, folks. When you see this get shared on Facebook, if you wouldn't mind sharing this, when you're watching it again, press like a lot, press love a lot. That makes it look important in front of the Facebook algorithms. But maybe I'll leave the final word to you two. Cameron, do you want to maybe share some hope for people who might be suffering, or some final words of wisdom?
Yeah, if you're watching and you're looking for something to help, or someone who needs help, just reach out to someone. If not Trevor, I'm sure Trevor can point you in the right direction, and just find out where you are able to currently receive this treatment, and no matter what it takes, it's worth it. It'll be the best decision you ever made. I guarantee it.
Right on. Thanks so much, brother. Aaron, any parting words of wisdom? And you are a wise man. It's seriously, man, it's to see you blossom spiritually as you have over the 8 years that I've known you. That's crazy. We've known each other that long. And yeah, man, so you've got a lot of wisdom to impart. Please share.
Well, I wish I felt the same way, Trevor. But all I know is that the psychedelics and the plant medicines have opened up a whole new world and have an approach to healing for me, and I just highly recommend it to everybody. And I'm so incredibly honored and to have you and a lot of other people doing the hard work that you're doing and bringing this forward to everybody. Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah, so if people are looking for more information, psychedelicassociation.net, click on the resources page. There's a lot of stuff there. There's a map to all the psychedelic societies around the world that our friend Mike Margolis knows about, and reach out to those local societies and start building community and start speaking to people. That's how you get your foot in the door in this world. And I just want to plug one more time the fact that we've got another webinar coming up in just about 2 weeks' time. The 27th of this month, a Thursday, going to be hosted by a physician, Dr. Pam Crisco. As well, it's going to feature some more Iboga stories, some more Ibogaine stories. So it's going to be an all-female panel, an evolution of this all-male panel. And we're really, really pumped to host those guys. It's a physician who doesn't know too much about Ibogaine, with a curiosity to know more. So I know there's at least a couple physicians that have been tuned in here, and you're going to really like that next one on the 27th. To stay in the loop, go to psychedelicassociation.net. Aaron, Cameron, and Fawad in Turkey. Amazing, guys. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care, everybody.
Nice.